ABC Women would like to thank BIPOC Executive Search for sponsoring today's episode.
The BIPOC Executive Search app is here for you. Get information about job opportunities we're recruiting for. Keep up to date and in the know about career news tailored to Indigenous, Black, and other racialized audiences. Gain helpful tips and learnings to help you on your career trajectory, celebrate job appointments, and more. The BIPOC Executive Search app, here to elevate the candidate experience for Black, Indigenous, and communities of color. Free to download and available on iPhone and Android smartphones.
Look how far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 woman growing strong. 100 woman where you belong. You stood tall and now you see, you have reached your destiny, woman.
100 ABC Women would like to take this opportunity to welcome our viewers and listening audience, families, friends, and our sponsors to our inspirational conversations, fireside chats with 100 ABC honorees. 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women is a bold initiative created by the co-authors, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, a former MP, Donna Jones-Simmons, a corporate diversity executive, and Dr. Denise O'Neill-Green, Vice President, Equity and Community Inclusion at Ryerson University. Our mission is to celebrate and archive the professional accomplishments of trailblazing Black women from all across Canada. The goal is to create an ever-expanding database available for current and future generations via print media, public and private libraries, as well as a website, which is www.100abcwomen.ca. We are pleased to bring you a series of fireside chats, which include conversations around education, healthcare, entertainment, creative arts, legal, technology, entrepreneurship, diversity and equity, media, engineering, politics, sports, and so much more. These, we know, are topics that matter to us and to you. These educational and inspirational conversations will be made available to all current and future generations via our 100 ABC YouTube channel. This is a great way to learn from our elders, brilliant-minded and accomplished Black Canadian women. Please join me as I welcome our moderator for this episode, Building Your Career, Deborah Cherenfant from TD Bank. She is Regional Manager, Women Entrepreneurs, Quebec and Atlantic. She is also the Chair and Spokesperson for Junior Chamber of Commerce of Montreal. So welcome, everybody. Without further ado, our moderator, Deborah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Donna, for the presentation. I'm very happy to be here. The topic of our conversation today is building your career, as Donna mentioned. And my guest today, Honourees, that I'm very excited to present in a few seconds, will be invited to discuss how they build their careers, especially when the going got rough. So allow me to introduce you in the order that they appear on your screen: Karen Murray, Beverley Rodrigues, and Marie Duwai-Sowa. So ladies, I'll start with a very easy and quick question. Karen, I'll start with you. Can you introduce yourself to the crowd? What are you doing currently, and what keeps you awake at night?
Wow. So Karen Murray, I am a centrally assigned principal in the Toronto District School Board. I have multiple portfolios, but the ones I'll share today is I'm a centrally assigned principal for the new, and it will be launched on Tuesday, Center of Excellence for Black Student Achievement. Very excited about that. And I also am the principal of Equity, Anti-Racism, and Anti-Oppression. Those two portfolios keep me up at night. It keeps me up at night is because it's about Black student success and excellence. It's about ensuring that we are committed to many of the expectations of the Toronto District School Board around Black student success, around their parents and their families in the community. And so every time we don't do it right, it keeps me up at night.
I can understand why, Karen, and I'm sure I guess as well. Beverley?
Hi, Deb.
Hi.
Beverley Rodrigues. I am in the business of training and consulting, which is a culmination of my life experiences and academic training. I am curious about people, particularly women, women in business, and how women expertly balance life and livelihoods. I learn from them, and I use that knowledge to investigate other factors that propel them and factors that hinder them from moving forward and living in, their true lives. So I describe myself as a training and development consultant. And what keeps me up at night? What keeps me up at night is always thinking about what my next project is going to be and how I can help women and organizations that support them move forward.
Thank you, Beverley. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
And
you.
I'll finish up with Marie. Can you tell us a bit about yourself? And same question, what keeps you up at night?
Thank you, Deborah, and it's such a wonderful pleasure to be here among such phenomenal women. A little bit about myself. Born and raised in Sierra Leone, West Africa. I immigrated to the United States after our civil war in the 90s, and have pretty much then immigrated to Canada over the last decade, and have really worked most of my career in the not-for-profit public sector, and now at McMaster as an employment equity specialist. So most of my career has been in EDI, social justice, and always working to advance marginalized communities, particularly groups that are impacted by various forms of discrimination. So I think what keeps me up at night, anybody who knows me knows I rarely go to bed before 2 or 3 in the morning, which is really bad. My resolution is to work on that this year. But what keeps me up is how can we do things better? Because every single day we're faced by lived realities and experiences that have not particularly improved. When we look at it, it's like you're looking at it from a glass half full, half empty. So you see the progress we've made, but then there's always something new that feels just as worse. And then you ask yourself, what can you do better? What policies can you influence? What changes can you make? So our lived experiences don't have to be so traumatic and difficult and have these disparate differences that exist between us within society. So I think that's what keeps me up at night, 24/7, thinking of how I can do things better for myself, my kids, my community, both here and in Sierra Leone, West Africa, quite frankly, because Africa is very dear to me, but Canada is also another home to me now. And then the US is also special to me. So it's really how do we make the world a better place is what keeps me up at night every day.
Yeah, very short nights from what you shared, Marie. And I wanted to know, because halfway through the year, you mentioned that it was your resolution this year. How are you succeeding so far?
It's going well. I think I'll say on an average 3-4 days of the week, I'm starting to go to bed maybe around 12:30. So it's getting better, but or I'll try to sleep in on weekends. So it's getting better.
It's
But
getting better. We're taking
yeah.
the progress that we're seeing, May Marie. We're taking it perfectly. So I see from your presentations, ladies, I see the common thread for the conversation, but also why you guys were invited to speak on that topic. And I wanted to go back to you, Beverly, because you mentioned the women, and I think that's a common subject or a common engagement between you and I, if I may say. And I wanted to know, what were the triggers that have led you to where you are today in your career?
Thank you. And before I go into the triggers, I wanted to take a step back and say thank you to the organizers of 100 ABC Women for recognizing me and my work, and for my recognizing my sister Honourees. It's really an honor, and I wanted to say thank you. So I sort of put my triggers, how I got to where I am today in, to three types of triggers: school and work, challenging myself, and family. So if you permit me, I will talk a little bit more about it. I was born in Guyana, and I lived there for most of my life before emigrating to Canada with my family in 2005. I started my career as a credit analyst in the development bank in Guyana, and I held several positions at, up to the level of senior manager, with the responsibility of the bank's largest regional portfolio. My employment at the bank began just after I completed 2 years of a diploma in agriculture. And at that time, we called it all of the ologies. I was exposed to zoology, entomology, and all of the ologies. The learning experience that I had at GSA, the Guyana School of Agriculture, was very rich. And I believe that something about that experience sparked my interest in education and training. So I wanted to sort of pause a little bit and share with the audience, those listening, those who don't know about Guyana or where Guyana is. It is located in South America, and it's the only English-speaking continent. It is also a member of CARICOM, which is a body that promotes economic cooperation amongst Caribbean countries. So Guyana's primary, I would say, renewable resource is agriculture. A lot have changed. They are now touted as being one of the fastest growing economies since the discovery of oil. So back to the bank. That experience, like I said, was phenomenal. I was exposed to farmers throughout the country. I learned from them. I worked hard, took my job seriously, and moved on with my career after slipping out of Guyana for 6 years, studied in Poland, and then I came back. So when I returned to Guyana, that's one of the things that I did was to challenge myself. I wanted to find something outside of my 9 to 5 that was, I thought was going to help me to relieve me from a boredom that I was experiencing. And I share this story because I think it's important for young persons to know that it's okay to challenge yourself, and it's okay to ask questions even if you feel uncomfortable about it. So I decided to drive around town one day and stop at an agency. I just saw the word agriculture, and I went in and I asked them, "What do you do?" And it's really fulfilling to see what that risk and that chance that I took as a very, very young girl, what that has turned out to be. So it resulted in my first research undertaking, a job as a consultant. At that time, I wasn't even sure what a consultant did. And it also resulted in unintended publications, 3 books, and then the story goes on. Being published, being able to complete other consulting assignments, being a co-founder of a consulting business in Guyana, as well as a co-owner of a business services center. And I'm going to hop over very quickly to family. I like to share the story of my family that has been very supportive. My dad was he had super work ethics, but the one person in my family that stood out to me and has triggered me to not be afraid to take risk is my grandmother, the late Belinda Davidson. She owned a trucking business. And for me, the funny story is one of her first employees was my grandfather. So I regard her as a leader in women's economic empowerment long before we took her craft and the craft of so many women in the Caribbean to academia. I learned from my family. And in a nutshell, those are the triggers that have propelled me. And those are the things that I go back to when I'm confronted with any challenge.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us today, Beverley. Karen, what about you? What were the triggers that have led you to the career that you lead today? And what are the principles that are guiding you still today?
I too think of family, and I think about the importance of this moment. So I too want to just say thank you and how honored I am to be in the company of these colleagues and having this recognition. I think I've had a very interesting career. I've worked at the Ministry of Education. I was a student achievement officer here in the province of Ontario. I've been at the university. I was the first teacher in residence at University of Toronto, OISE. And then I've been a central leader in my board for a very long time. So I did a lot of firsts. And when I think about all of that, I think about intellectual humility. I think about the importance of always recognizing everything's a learning journey and you forever grow and you never hit expertise because there's something new to always enter. I think about the importance of positionality, understanding yourself, where do you fit? And the secrets and affirmation that your family gives you and put in that backpack of yours and you didn't even recognize until you get into the job. And then you have to pull it out because sometimes when we, and I think May Marie may understand this, when you're doing work with equity, diversity, inclusion, anti-racism, there's days it's heavy. And so you need that affirmation in that backpack to pull out and be able to say, you know what? When my grandmama affirmed me and said, when my mother affirmed me and said, when my community affirmed me and said, this is what holds me, that's what my foundation is. Understanding the importance of mentorship. We don't talk about that enough. The mentors that I've had in my life and how each one of them continue to pour into me so that I have the foundation to kind of do the heavy lifting that I do sometimes. And I think the other principle that guides me is understand the importance of transferable skills. When I came out of university, education wasn't in my bucket. I was out in the community doing work with visually impaired and psychiatric survivors. Like I had no intention, that was in health. I had no intention to go into education. Yeah. And then when I landed in education, sometimes you find a place that you just fit. And what that transferable skill was the importance of listening, like really listening to people and really placing them in your heart, centering students. And I think in the work that I do, if you don't center students, if you don't center their families, if you don't center community, you can never, it doesn't matter what your title is. And so for me, those are the principles that guide my career. From the time I was a community person working in spaces to now being a central principal, um, doing being principals of other principals, and doing that work there. So I think that's where I would say that's what guides me. And I think the triggers would be family as well. Um, Beverly and my fellow Guyanese, but don't know anything about the country because I came here too small, and lived here and spent my life in the U.S. as well. So we have that memory as a connecting web as well. So family for sure, and roots, absolutely.
Thank you so much. That's very inspiring, Karen. I wanted to maybe go back to May Marie, because a lot of the elements that Karen has shared, I think you could relate to. Do you relate to those elements, especially in evolving in EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion? And how do you navigate through that journey in EDI?
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. As I was listening to Karen and Beverly, it's amazing. I feel like we've met in another life because I was so happy I got to meet two other amazing Guyanese women today. Because one of the people I hold so dear, who was also my former manager and a really, really close family friend, I don't know, you might know her, Maxine Carter, who's done tremendous work in the community, EDI space, City of Hamilton. She's also Guyanese. So lucky for me, I get to know two more Guyanese people today. But I've always known you're special people because she's just amazing. So it's nice to know a lot more today. But through Maxine, I know a lot about Guyana, and I've always told myself I'm going to visit one day. But as I was listening to both Karen and Beverly, there was such a common thread when I listened to your stories, because that's what has been mine, where I've just never been afraid to take risks. And the same thing, every position I've had, it's either been a first or something where nobody else was taking it. They said, can you take a chance with this? I'm like, sure. So just that not being afraid to take risk, And for me, it's been family, faith, and purpose. As I was listening to Karen, again, that sense of purpose. There's always a reason why we're placed where we are. Positionality matters, because I always believe that God has a divine purpose for us even before we know it. So I remember I was so sad crying because we had the war, and I had a visa at the time to come to the US. So my family said, well, you can go ahead because we want to protect the girls at the time, because it was really dangerous. As some of you might know, with wars, women are always at risk. So my mom and my stepdad and said, you can go ahead, at least go to the States. We're going to go to another country. They went to the Gambia at the time in West Africa. And I was crying. I said, I would rather die with you all than have to go. I don't want to leave. And they said, no, you have to go, because we had uncles and aunts in the States, but I just could not understand or appreciate at the time why me? I don't want to leave my family behind. I was quite young, but now it all makes sense because it was part of my trajectory and my purpose to come make these connections. Today we're all reunited again. I was able to pave the way for my family, and everybody now can be in between all the countries. But it's the work I've done, lots of firsts, but doing this EDI work, I remember studying sociology in university because I did 3 years of university back home, and it resonated with me. I understood how to analyze society and look at the challenges in society. But coming to the United States really opened my eyes to the reality, because there's the Western ideal in what the US looks like to Africa, and then there's the reality of the ghettoization and the lived realities of Black people in the US. And just coming and seeing that reality, I jumped right in, working in the community and really beginning to understand that maybe there was a reason I came here. to begin to make those connections and trying to tie it back to home. And then again, I'm very spontaneous. I don't plan a lot of things. Next thing you know, my husband at the time, we were dating at that time, and he was in Canada because the war had brought him here. And next thing you know, I'm moving to Canada. It wasn't planned, quite spontaneous. My friend said, well, if you can go to school there, fine. So then I went to grad school here at the University of Guelph. But again, it was part of that bigger plan, expanding my purpose, where I then came to Canada, finished grad school, and literally the week after I finished grad school, I came to Hamilton after the 9/11 attacks, where they had burned the Hindu Samaj temple in Hamilton. And they had just gotten funding for the Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion. And I had a conversation with the ED, and they said, well, we're trying to bring the community together. If this is something you think you can take on. I was still in Guelph. That was the first time I'd visited Hamilton that weekend for the Anti-Racism Symposium. And I took it on, and the story just continues, obviously, from that on to taking on the accessibility and equity specialist role at the city. But it all makes sense now, where taking on these challenging roles, trying to challenge the system in terms of really bringing about transformational change within these institutions. And because I was always so adventurous, and I believe in the power of yes. I don't like when you say no, that's when I get excited, because I'm like, okay, this is a challenge. We can figure out, it might not be a complete yes, but let's figure out how we can get this done. Maybe let's get creative. This is a shared responsibility. Let's have collective ownership of this challenge. So that passion is what drives me. And now my sense of purpose, to know that I was brought on this earth to make a difference in my own little way. And those are the triggers. When I see something that needs to get done, or something that's an injustice, or just something that we can improve on, or in a way that I can help, I always get energized by those things. And my faith, that's what has carried me through, because this work can be difficult. It can be so challenging. There are days you're just in tears, where you're challenged to your face, or where quietly you can see, even ourselves, we experience the injustice, we experience various forms of isms and the microaggressions. And if you don't have strong faith, and if you're not grounded by family, which again, as I listen to both Beverley and Karen, family, faith, they sustain us. That's what sustained me. And that's really how I navigate this world. I never believe. That's why when people usually laugh at me and say, how did you plan your career? I said, I never really set out to have a particular career path. I just took on things that I thought I had transferable skills. So it was so right on, Karen. Because when I look at a job description, I don't particularly look at the title. I just look to say, can I do this job? Do I have skills that I can apply to this role, whether it's a consulting role or anything? So I think we have so many transferable skills, but a lot of times people get set on their niche career area of focus. And it's okay. There are certain skills that are very specialized. And I think for those, you have to stay in your niche, but there are lots of transferable skills that we do have that we can bring to even committees that we sit on and support in various capacities. And that's what I really lean on to keep going as well, never stopping myself or trying to say I can't do it, and always trying to do the best I can, because I don't have all the answers either. So collaboration is very key for me as well. I lean into resources and people that I know might have the answers or can do it better or do it differently to help get the same goal that I would have liked. So it's really being skilled at navigating those things.
That's very, very smart. Thank you, May Marie. And I love something that you mentioned at the beginning, positionality matters. I'm definitely keeping that. Beverley, speaking of transferable skills, what is your motivation for the work that you do and also your career objectives?
Yeah, fantastic. I really love the fact that Karen and May-Marie raised the issue of transferable skills. And, you know, one of my challenges actually is, the way I was able to overcome what I call roadblocks and closed doors. And I turned that into a motivator, or what I would say motivated me to continue to do my work. And I want to really expand more on that motivator. And you may be surprised that that challenge, I mean, for the very first time in my career, the first time I experienced such a challenge was when I came to Canada. I describe it as climbing Niagara. That's my story. And the whole notion or the expectation of me needing to have or to display Canadian experience was kind of shocking for me, because here, I thought I shared the same ideas and thoughts that, I've had, a wealth of experience, and there are so many things that I can do in terms of transferring my skills and, make them applicable in the Canadian workplace. So I was expected to discount my prior work and experience and limit what I did career-wise. I was told that my resume should highlight only my last 5 years of work, and which means that it took me 2 years to find a real job. So then I would have had 2 years of almost, just doing job searching as something that I, display on my resume. So I share the story because, like May Marie said, it's important to recognize when you are at the crossroads and when you can do something about it. When you tend to lose ground and you are you're about to be defined by someone else, or let us say by the system. So my response to that was, to tap into some of what I would call the best kept secrets. And one of the best kept secrets, I believe, is the secret of volunteering professionally, and giving yourself a chance to demonstrate that you do have skills that can be transferred into the workplace. So I started off by volunteering in the community. I volunteered in Africa, and after that, people felt comfortable with me and what I had to offer, and it resulted in work. It resulted in in consultancies, and it resulted into where I am today. So my objective is to continue my work on global development issues such as women's economic empowerment, and to find ways to help leaders of civil society organizations that support women and men to improve their lives. And so my work will be situated somewhere in the juncture of evidence-based research, teaching, and consulting. So that sort of explains what motivates me to keep moving on.
Keep going. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Beverly. Of course, ladies, as you know, we could be speaking for hours and hours about tips on how you build your careers and how you face these challenges. But we are approaching the end of that conversation, and I wanted to have some input from each of you on tips, advice, and also lessons that you learned from those challenging times during your career. Because of course, the conversation is around building your career, but also speaking of those times when the going gets tough. So I want to maybe start with Karen about tips that you would be able to share with our audience today on how to overcome those challenges in your career, and on maybe some specific advice that you could share with us as well.
Okay. I'll position it first by saying a lot of my work, as I shared with you, focuses on addressing and disrupting anti-Black racism within the context of a large system like the Toronto District School Board, and also provincially, because one of the things I do, I just finished with a team writing the guidelines for the first additional qualification course for educators in the province focusing on anti-Black racism, addressing anti-Black racism. So one of the things, one challenges I face is by nature of my identity, and I'm so proud, and I name, so when you say positionality, I name it. I'm like, I'm a Black feminist to the core, right? People think that the work that I do is just because it's my passion, not recognizing the larger scale that system, colonization exists.
The big
Systems,
picture.
yes, system and institutional racism exists. And it is so normalized for those who look like me. It is so normalized that it's rendered invisible. And so people think this is just how you have to navigate, this is how you have to engage. So even though in my board's plans, it talks about this, even though in the work that we do, we're expected to do it, by nature of my identity, when I walk into this space, it's your thing. And I say that to say these tips. When your passion and your role and the expectations of your role align, be proud of it. Check to see and stand on the shoulders of those who paved the way before you. The only way I could talk about anti-Black racism is by recognizing that Akua Benjamin at Ryerson coined this phrase. And so, no, it's not an American term, because when you're in this work, it's always, anytime you talk equity and anti-oppression, it has to come from the United States of America. No, right here, it's a Canadian term. And so me standing on that show and putting her name in the space, and that's the other tip. Don't be afraid to name those who led the way, because we couldn't be in the spaces we were without them. You know, I'm always in self-reflection. I'm always reflecting on my practice. And I'm always thinking about these things. One, where does my philosophy come from? From where did I get my values, attitudes, and beliefs? My pedagogy, my grounding, where did I get that from? Think about that. Who are you in academic conversation with? Doesn't matter the field. You have to read. You have to solidify yourself in whatever stance you are, because your philosophy, your pedagogy leads to your practice. And so I always have to think about, keep reading, keep building, keep growing. Where does my knowledge source comes from, and challenge it so I have more information. I think about challenging your new learning and preparing yourself always for the next step. So my other part is, if someone paid it for you, poured oil in you, who are you paying it forward with? You got to, because if you don't, then everything leaves with you, right? And then, of course, I'm so bad at this one. I'm bad, but I like to put it out there in the space, which is self-care. When you're engaging in these heavy work and you hold the body, an African Caribbean diasporic body, a Black body, if we hold this, it's not easy, right? I said institutional. Microaggressions happens every day. So the question is, how do you engage in self-care, right? Audre Lorde's quote about self-care is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. And then, in fact, by nature of that, it's political warfare. We need to remember that. I'm bad at it in terms of the self-care part, because sometimes you get so caught up in the work, you're just like, keep going and going and going. But you need to stop, because you have to reserve yourself for the battle tomorrow. And then affinity spaces. We don't talk about that a lot here. Marie, you know it's talked about a lot in the US. Creating spaces for our bodies, for us to do this work, to engage in anti-oppression, anti-racism work, anti-Black racism work. we need to have spaces, and we need to think, how do we create those spaces for us, right? So we can heal, and we can engage in self-reflection, and we can have deep interrogation of what we're dealing with every single day. And I think until we can really think about how we create those spaces for our bodies, it's hard to continue to do this work. But young people find those spaces. And then the last thing I'll say is this: we need to build alliances for ourselves. And sometimes we say so clustered into our own realities. So this is where I work, so this is where my circle lies, right? Break out of those circles and center community, like really center it, because we can't ride this alone. We can't do the work we do alone. And community is usually the space that can help us. But remember what I said, you know, you can't do this work to battle a system without having support on the other side. So that's some of my advice that I give. I think the last thing I'll say is this: every challenge I've learned over all my different experiences is new learning. And sometimes we get into ourselves and don't see the learning from it. And then the same thing keeps happening and happening and happening, and you can't figure out what it is. Take the moment and say, this happened for a reason. What is that reason? And once I know what the reason is, I know how to navigate and negotiate the space the next time. And I think for those who are thinking about careers that heavy lifting is involved, think about that. Don't take it in and make it be about you. Think about, I lived this moment for a reason. My faith led me here for a reason. And so how then do I prepare for if it ever happens to me the next time? I think I'll leave it there.
So many, Karen. I literally had chills. I thought it was the weather at first, but it was not the weather. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And May Marie, I know that you might have other things to share as well, and I'll leave you to it.
So I was just like, I could just go on and on listening. Oh my goodness, we need more fireside chats, such nuggets of wisdom. I could just listen forever. But absolutely, I agree with everything that's been said. So there really isn't much more. All I can say is I was really fortunate to grow up at a time, particularly also growing up in Africa, where it was so ingrained in me, Black is beautiful and proud. Like I grew up just with this sense of confidence in in who I am, like my heritage. And so because I've just always had this sense of pride, I carry with me everywhere. So when I walk in a space, I really don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Nobody's going to define me because I know who I am. Like you can't tell me I don't belong in that space. While I could see the eyes, and sometimes I might be the only one in that space that looks like me, I know who I am because of my sense of self and my sense of pride. And there's just so many role models. So when we talk about negative stereotypes, I say, look at the positive stereotypes. There's so many people that have come before us and that are here that have done such remarkable things that I, every single day as a Black woman, is so proud of, that you can't tell me nothing. So I carry that pride when I determine what I want to do. If there's a position that I think I can aspire towards, I go for it. That one might not work, but it doesn't mean that another one won't work, or I define my own. That's why I was glad Beverly and everyone here, even Karen, talk about consulting and other things that we all do, because we have the skill sets. It's not just about what we get paid to do, but for things that we create. Everybody has a side hustle these days as well. It's again, bringing those things that we know we have. So tap into those things. And really don't always be motivated either for a job because of what it pays. I always say, look at purpose and fulfillment. And when we talk about self-care, some jobs might pay you a lot of money, but will you have quality of life? For me, quality of life matters. And a lot of times, if you do a job well, a job might start off not paying you so much, but as you continue to demonstrate excellence, money, recognition, all of that stuff will come because you define your worth. and you get to that place where you can begin to negotiate your worth. It all comes down to, for me, first is my integrity, doing a good job, demonstrating capabilities and competence and excellence, and then being in that position to negotiate at that point, because I have a negotiating power. And when you're in a space where you're needed, then it also helps for you to actually negotiate your worth. And it's always important to be authentic. When you're authentic in who you are, that's why Karen is like, I am a Black feminist. This is who I am. Your authenticity matters because that's when you're at your best and that's when you thrive. So it's mind over matter, because if what we believe determines how we move in society, determines the standards we set for ourselves. So if we think we're great, then we will get there in how we navigate society. But if we think we're less than, then we begin to question the spaces we want to get into. So all of those things, how we affirm ourselves, it makes a difference, right? So I will say, just be who you are. Try to lean into who you truly are and what fulfills you. And I think definitely we need more spaces for affinity groups, just resource groups, support networks. I know a lot of groups are doing it, but we have to do it better. We have to have more solidarity in how we're doing it, because we have a common story, a shared story of heritage and ancestry that we can't lose sight of, regardless of what parts or countries we're from. Our shared heritage is our Blackness and our multiracial identities and ethnic identities that we all share, and our gendered identities that we share. So let's focus on all of those that really, I would say we all are walking a shared trajectory. We just don't realize it. We think we're walking divergent paths, but it's really walking still together, because a lot of times when you really look through the intersections, there's so much we share. And I would like to look at life in the intersectional lens and see the things that we all hold dear. So anyone pursuing your career, also look to role models. A lot of times people think we're all so busy that if you send an email, we might not respond. We might not respond immediately, but we're all here to mentor, to support, to guide, even respond to an email. So feel free, if you see someone and you find their contact, you want to ask a question, reach out, because we're all really looking for ways to help, but sometimes people don't tap into those resources. And that's sometimes how you make those lasting connections as well. So I think overall, I'll say go through life, always leaning to any form of spirituality that you believe in to keep you grounded, keep you safe and focused and strengthened, because it's a challenge. It's not always easy. Lots of struggles, lots of challenges, but also a lot of rewards. And you might not always get to the big challenges, but sometimes starting even with the low hanging fruit is where you maybe build those alliances and those allies, because they might have the power to open the door, help you navigate those bigger challenges, because we need to sort of walk that path and really rely on one another to get there. But don't give up. I don't give up. I'm just like, I keep trying.
I
Yeah.
completely agree, and thank you for that optimistic speech, May Marie. I apologize for having to do that, but Beverly, I will
No.
ask you maybe to wrap up with advice in 30 seconds, because time is running by so fast, especially when the content is golden like the one that you shared today. So Beverly, 30 seconds to wrap up.
Thank you, Deborah. 30 seconds, we'll do it following Karen's and Marie's, their words. I would say to be authentic. Continue to be authentic. Do not be afraid, like Karen said, to read. Do not be afraid to be a continuous learner. Do not be afraid to change with the times or make adoptions, to suit what is happening. We've just had COVID-19, and we saw how the world pivoted to an online environment. If you don't know it, seek a friend, seek an institution, go somewhere and change, and be ready for the next cycle in life.
That's 30 seconds, Beverly. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm sure that the audience will save that recording for many, many months and years to come, if ever. Thank you so much for the content and the advice that you were able to share today. Karen, May Marie, Beverly, it was a pleasure and an honor for me to be with you today for the conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you, of course, to the whole team of our guests today. And that's it for me, guys. Thank you very much. And congratulations again on the honor that you're receiving as one of the 100 accomplished Black Canadian women.
Thank you, Deborah. You were amazing. And thank you so much again, Karen and Beverly. So nice to meet you.
Same thing. We're now a part of the same web.
Absolutely.
It was wonderful to meet you all again.
Same here.
Thank you all so much. And I'm certain that the audience will appreciate and, like I said, save for later and many years to come the conversation today. Thank you again.
Look how far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 woman growing strong. 100 woman where you belong. You stood tall and now you see, you have reached